Hallie, a quiet new student, was bullied by rich kids and the teachers were afraid of them. We'll find out what happens next, but before that, please subscribe, like, and comment on this video. Hallie Thompson was just 12 years old when he moved to Greenwood, a small, quiet town, with his father. His mother had passed away a few years earlier, leaving just him and his dad, Richard Thompson, who was a retired boxer. After a successful career in the ring, Richard wanted to start a new life in a peaceful place, hoping Greenwood would offer them both a fresh start. At first, Greenwood seemed like the perfect place. It was calm and quiet, just what they needed. But Greenwood Middle School turned out to be anything but peaceful for Hallie. Being the new kid was hard enough, but for Hallie, it was even harder. The moment he walked into his new classroom, he could feel everyone staring at him and whispering about him. Hallie was smaller than most of the other boys his age. He was thin, with a quiet personality, which made him stand out in a way he didn't want to. It didn't take long for the bullies to notice Hallie. These weren't just any bullies. They were the sons of the richest families in town. Their parents donated a lot of money to the school, so the bullies could get away with almost anything. The leader of the group was Jake Morris, a tall, strong 15-year-old. He was much older and bigger than Hallie. Jake's friends, Mark and Lucas, followed his lead, and together, they made life miserable for Hallie. A week after Hallie started at Greenwood Middle School, the bullies cornered him for the first time. It happened during lunch. Hallie was sitting alone, quietly eating his sandwich, when Jake and his gang approached him. "Hey, new kid," Jake said with a sneer, grabbing Hallie's sandwich out of his hand. "You don't belong here. This is our turf." Mark and Lucas laughed as Jake crushed Hallie's sandwich under his shoe. Hallie tried to ignore them, focusing on the apple in his lunchbox. But Jake wasn't finished. He grabbed the apple and threw it across the cafeteria, where it hit the wall and splattered everywhere. "What's the matter? Too scared to do anything?" Jake mocked, giving Hallie a shove on the shoulder. The cafeteria fell silent. All the other kids watched, but nobody said a word. They knew better than to get involved when Jake and his friends were around. Hallie's face turned red with anger and embarrassment, but he stayed silent. His father had always taught him to keep his temper in check and stay calm, even when provoked. But this was different. This was something new and much more intense than anything he had faced before. Hallie wasn't sure how to deal with it, but he knew one thing. This wasn't going to be easy. The bullying didn't stop after that first encounter. Every day, Jake and his friends found new ways to make Hallie's life miserable. They would trip him as he walked down the hallways, knock his books out of his hands, and shove him into lockers. In gym class, they made sure to target him during games, throwing balls at him as hard as they could or purposely leaving him out when teams were chosen. No matter how hard Hallie tried to avoid them, they always found a way to torment him. The worst part was that the teachers didn't do anything to stop it. They would see what was happening, but looked the other way, either because they were scared of the boy's powerful parents or because they didn't want to get involved. As a result, Hallie's grades started to drop, and he found himself dreading going to school every morning. The place that was supposed to be about learning and making friends had become a place of fear and humiliation. Hallie wanted to tell his father about what was happening, but he didn't want to burden him. Richard was already dealing with so much, starting a new job and raising Hallie on his own. Hallie didn't want to add to his worries. So he kept everything bottled up inside, trying to handle it on his own. But one day, after yet another humiliating encounter with the bullies, Hallie couldn't hold it in anymore. He went home, ran straight to his room, and locked the door behind him. Tears of frustration and anger started to pour down his face. All the emotions he had been holding back finally came out, and he felt overwhelmed. His father, Richard, heard the door slam and grew concerned. He walked up to Hallie's room and knocked softly on the door. "Hallie, you okay, son?" Richard's voice was calm and gentle, but Hallie could hear the worry in it. "Yeah, Dad," Hallie replied, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "I'm just tired, that's all." Richard stood outside the door for a moment, sensing that something was wrong. He didn't want to push Hallie, so he decided to give him some space, hoping that his son would talk to him when he was ready. Richard walked away, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply troubling Hallie. He made a mental note to keep a close eye on him and be there whenever Hallie needed to talk. The bullying didn't stop. It went on for weeks. Every day, Hallie felt worse about himself. His self-esteem, or how he felt about who he was, began to drop lower and lower. He started to doubt himself, wondering why Jake and his friends had picked him to bully. He kept thinking about what he might have done to deserve such cruelty. The harsh words and actions of the bullies made him question if he really was weak, just as they said. But even though Hallie was feeling down, something inside him was starting to change. Deep down, a small fire began to grow, a feeling of anger and determination that got stronger each day. He didn't like how he was being treated, and this feeling inside him was telling him that it wasn't right. One evening, after a particularly rough day at school where the bullies had been especially mean, Hallie sat on the edge of his bed. He looked at the boxing gloves hanging on the wall, the ones his father had given him a few years ago. Richard had taught him how to box, but it wasn't just about learning to fight. His father had explained that boxing was about more than just hitting someone. It was about being smart, being patient, and knowing how to control yourself. "Remember, Hallie," his father had once said, "boxing isn't just about throwing punches. It's about strategy, patience, and control. Never use it to start a fight, but if someone ever pushes you too far, you have the right to defend yourself." As Hallie thought about his father's words, he felt his hands clench into fists. The small fire inside him roared to life, turning into a strong determination. He was tired of being the victim, of letting Jake and his gang push him around. He had stayed quiet for too long, and now he knew he had to do something about it. That night, Hallie made a decision. The next time the bullies tried to mess with him, he wouldn't back down. He would be ready to stand up for himself. The next day at school, Hallie felt different. The familiar feeling of dread was still there, deep in his stomach. But now, there was something new alongside it. Determination. He knew it wouldn't be long before Jake and his friends tried to mess with him again. They had been getting bolder, thinking that Hallie was too scared to fight back. But today, they were about to find out how wrong they were. As expected, during lunch, Jake and his gang cornered Hallie near the lockers. Jake's smirk was bigger than ever as he grabbed Hallie by the collar of his shirt. "Didn't I tell you to stay out of our way, Thompson?" Jake sneered. "Or are you too dumb to get it?" Hallie didn't answer. Instead, he took a deep breath, just like his father had taught him. He focused on calming his nerves, getting ready for what was about to happen. Then Jake shoved him hard against the lockers. The loud bang echoed through the hallway, and nearby students turned to watch. Hallie could see their faces. They looked scared and felt sorry for him. But Hallie wasn't looking for pity today. He was ready to stand up for himself. Jake raised his fist, getting ready to punch Hallie. But before he could do it, Hallie ducked and quickly stepped to the side, making Jake stumble forward. Jake's eyes grew wide with surprise. Nobody had ever dodged him like that before. "What the?" Jake started to say, but Hallie didn't wait for him to finish. With a quick move, Hallie swung his fist and punched Jake right in the stomach. Jake gasped, bending over in pain. Mark and Lucas, Jake's friends, just stood there in shock, not sure what to do. "Back off, Jake," Hallie said, his voice steady and calm. "I'm not scared of you anymore." Jake quickly straightened up, his face twisted with anger. He lunged at Hallie, but Hallie was ready. He remembered everything his father had taught him: the right stance, the perfect timing, the importance of precision. Hallie ducked again and delivered a strong uppercut punch that hit Jake under the chin. Jake staggered backward, holding his face. Mark and Lucas finally snapped out of their shock and charged at Hallie together. But Hallie was prepared for them too. Mark swung wildly at Hallie, but Hallie quickly moved to the side and punched Mark in the side. Lucas tried to grab Hallie from behind, but Hallie spun around and kicked Lucas in the shin. The two boys cried out in pain and stepped back. The hallway was completely silent. No one could believe what they were seeing. Hallie Thompson, the quiet new kid who everyone thought was weak, was standing up to the biggest bullies in the school and winning. "Leave me alone!" Hallie warned, keeping his eyes locked on Jake. "Or this won't be the last time you regret messing with me!" The fight didn't last long. Once Jake and his gang realized they couldn't win, they quickly backed off, stumbling away with bruised egos more than bruised bodies. Hallie watched them retreat, his heart pounding hard in his chest. He had done it. He had finally stood up to the bullies who had made his life miserable for so long. Word about the fight spread like wildfire through the school. By the end of the day, everyone knew what had happened. The teachers, who had turned a blind eye to the bullying for so long, couldn't ignore it anymore. The principal called all the boys involved to his office, ready to deal with the situation. But to everyone's surprise, Hallie wasn't punished. The principal, who had received many complaints about Jake and his gang over the years, was actually relieved to finally have a reason to take action against them. Jake, Mark, and Lucas were suspended from school. Their parents were furious, but this time, they couldn't protect their sons from the consequences of their actions. Hallie's bravery gave courage to other students who had also been bullied, encouraging them to speak up about their experiences. The atmosphere at school began to change. The power that Jake and his friends had held over the other students was shattered. After that day, Hallie's life improved a lot. The other students started treating him with respect, and the teachers paid more attention to what was happening in the hallways, making sure that no one else would have to go through what Hallie had endured. When Hallie told his father about the fight, Richard was concerned but also proud. He reminded Hallie that violence should only be used as a last resort, but he was glad that Hallie had defended himself when it really mattered. With the bullies out of the picture, Hallie started to feel much better at school. The fear and anxiety that had once gripped him began to fade away. He no longer dreaded going to school each day. Instead, he started to enjoy it. Hallie began participating more in class, raising his hand to answer questions, and even volunteering to help with group projects. He also made new friends, something he had struggled to do before. One of the biggest changes in Hallie's life was joining the school's boxing club. The club became a special place for him, a safe and controlled environment where he could practice the boxing skills his father had taught him. It wasn't just about throwing punches, it was about discipline, strategy, and staying calm under pressure. Hallie found that boxing helped him channel his energy in a positive way, and it gave him a sense of purpose. The boxing coach, Mr. Reynolds, quickly noticed Hallie's potential. Despite being younger and smaller than most of the other boys, Hallie had a natural talent for boxing. He was quick on his feet, and he knew how to read his opponent's moves. Mr. Reynolds was impressed and decided to take Hallie under his wing, giving him extra attention during practice. "Hallie, you've got real talent," Mr. Reynolds told him one afternoon after practice. "With some more training, you could be a contender in the regional tournaments." Hallie felt a surge of pride when he heard those words. For the first time since moving to Greenwood, he felt like he belonged somewhere. The confidence he gained from boxing began to spill over into other parts of his life. He became more outgoing, and the kids who had once been too afraid to talk to him now wanted to be his friend. Even his teachers noticed the change in him. They praised him for his improved focus in class and his willingness to participate. But even as Hallie grew stronger and more confident, he never forgot what he had learned from being bullied. He understood how important it was to use his skills responsibly and not to let the power he had gained turn him into a bully. Hallie made it a point to help others who were going through tough times. just like he had. He didn't want anyone else to feel the way he had felt. One day, Hallie noticed a younger boy named Timmy being picked on by a group of older students. The scene was all too familiar, and it reminded Hallie of his own experiences with Jake and his gang. Without hesitation, Hallie stepped in to help. "Hey, leave him alone," Hallie said firmly as he stood between Timmy and the bullies. The older students recognized Hallie from the fight with Jake, and they knew better than to mess with him. They quickly backed off, muttering under their breath as they walked away. "Thanks, Hallie," Timmy said, looking up at him with wide, grateful eyes. "No problem," Hallie replied, giving Timmy a reassuring smile. "If anyone bothers you again, just let me know." From that day on, Hallie became known not just as a talented boxer, but as someone who stood up for others. He had turned his painful experience into something positive, using it to make a difference in the lives of other students. While Jake, Mark, and Lucas were serving their suspension, they had plenty of time to think about what had happened. The suspension was tough on them, not just because they couldn't go to school, but because they had lost the power they once had over other students. They used to be feared, but now, that fear and the respect they got from it were gone. Jake, especially, was struggling with a deep sense of shame. He had always thought of himself as the toughest kid in school, the one no one dared to mess with. But Hallie had changed all that. Jake's image was shattered, and everyone now saw him not as a leader, but as a bully who had been put in his place by someone younger and smaller. One day during the suspension, Jake's father, Mr. Morris, decided to have a serious talk with him. "Jake, what happened?" Mr. Morris asked sternly. "Why were you picking on that boy? You've embarrassed this family." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to look his father in the eye. "I don't know, Dad. We were just having fun. I didn't think it would go this far." "Fun?" Mr. Morris repeated, clearly upset. "Hurting someone is not fun. We raised you to be respectful and kind. I'm really disappointed in you." Jake's heart sank. He had never seen his father so disappointed before. His words hit hard, making Jake realize the seriousness of his actions. He had been a bully, and now he was facing the consequences. "I'm sorry, Dad," Jake mumbled, barely audible. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad." "You need to make it right," Mr. Morris said firmly. "When you go back to school, you're going to apologize to that boy and to anyone else you've hurt. You need to start acting like the good person we know you can be." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of his father's words. He knew he had to change, not just to regain his father's respect, but to feel better about himself. When Jake, Mark, and Lucas returned to school, they were met with a mix of curiosity and indifference. Their days of being in control were over. Other students no longer feared them, and they found themselves left out of the social groups they once led. Jake knew what he had to do. During lunch, he saw Hallie sitting with a group of friends and decided to approach him. His heart was pounding as he walked over. The cafeteria became quiet as everyone watched, wondering what was going to happen. "Hallie," Jake began, his voice a bit shaky. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Hallie looked up, surprised. He nodded and got up, following Jake to a quieter spot in the cafeteria. Mark and Lucas watched from a distance, their faces unreadable. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," Jake said sincerely. "For everything. I was wrong to treat you that way. We were all wrong." Hallie looked at Jake, trying to see if he was being honest. He saw that Jake truly seemed sorry. "It's not easy to apologize," Hallie said after a moment, "but I appreciate it. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, to me or anyone else." Jake nodded, looking relieved. "I won't, I promise." The two boys stood there awkwardly for a moment before Hallie extended his hand. Jake hesitated, then shook it. It wasn't the beginning of a friendship, but it was a step toward healing the hurt that had been caused. What do you think about this story? Leave a comment below this video. Thanks for watching.